Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. This week's Parsha is out of Mikeitz, Shabbos Chanukah. Parshas Mikeitz begins by V'hi Mikeitz Shenasayim Yomim Uparei Cholim. It was after 2 years, and that means the additional 2 years that Yosef was imprisoned. He was imprisoned for 10 years, and then there were additional 2 years, and Paro was dreaming, and it tells us of the dreams of Paro. And our sages say this is a very strange phraseology. It should have said, and Paro dreamed after 2 years. After all, which is the cause and which is the effect? Yosef interprets Paro's dreams, and as a result, he ascends to the incredible position of ruler over the entire Egyptian empire, second only to Paro. This was as a result of the dreams that Paro had. So it should have said, first the cause, Paro dreamed after 2 years, and this was his dream, and Yosef is then brought to interpret the dreams. Why does it say after 2 years, 2 years of Yosef being further imprisoned, Paro dreamed? Seems to be the effect is preceding the cause, very strange. We know that Yosef interprets the dreams for Paro, and he tells Paro that this dream that the Almighty has given you is because you are the Pharaoh and you have the ability and the responsibility to care for your nation. And therefore, during the 7 years of plenty, you shall, he says, Chimesh es Eretz Mitzrayim, you shall prepare the land during these 7 years, v'yikvetzu es kolecha la'shanim ha'tovos, and you will gather all of the grain, the excess grain that you will have in such bounty during these 7 years, gather them. They shall be a pikodin la'aretz, a security for the land for the ensuing years of famine. Obviously, Yosef is telling Paro that you're going to have this responsibility to gather all that you can in preparation for the years of famine. Why does Yosef seem to be redundant? He says, Paro, appoint officers and chimesh es Eretz Mitzrayim, prepare the land and gather the grain. What does this mean, prepare the land? What is Paro doing preparing the land? He should just tell him, appoint officers and gather all of the grain that you can amass. That shall be a security. What is this for chimesh? Very, very strange expression. We know that Yosef is appointed viceroy. His brothers come down to Egypt in search of food. Yosef orchestrates that they are accused of being spies. They are incarcerated for 3 days. He tells them they can return back home with the food that they need, but they must bring their youngest brother Binyamin to Egypt so that Yosef can ascertain that he was not here before and did not gather information to return to his source, and that indeed they are not spies. So Yosef orchestrates that the brothers will have to bring Binyamin back. The brothers come back. Everything seems fine. Then Yosef says to his trusted attendant, take my silver goblet, place it in the bag of Binyamin. And then as the brothers are leaving, Yosef sends his soldiers, they stop them. Why did you take this goblet? They say, what are you talking about? Lo and behold, they find it in the bags of Binyamin. Yehuda, who accepted upon himself the responsibility to his father Yaakov to guarantee the safety of Binyamin, pleads before Yosef, and he says to him, what can we possibly say? Tell me, what can we do? How can we justify that we are indeed innocent? This is what he says. He says these 3 things. What are the 3 things? Manoima, manedaber, manitztadok. What can we say to your accusation of our being spies? What can we possibly state in regard to when we found that the money that we originally paid for the food was returned to us? We didn't steal it. And now how can we possibly justify ourselves with this new accusation of Binyamin stealing your goblet? Three things Yehuda says. And Yosef tells him, heaven forbid that I should do anything which is not justified. Binyamin, with whom we found our goblet, he'll remain here as my slave, my servant. You go back in peace to your father. That's where the Parsha ends. It seems as though the Parsha is a cliffhanger. Next week's Parsha Vayigash tells us that Yehuda comes before Yosef and pleads and beseeches him, and Yosef is overwhelmed. Why would the Parsha end in a cliffhanger? Why would the Parsha end right in the middle of the whole dialogue between Yehuda and Yosef? The sages explain there is much more to this Parsha than just the events of Yosef and his brothers in Egypt. We think that because Paro had a dream, that is what set into motion the events to enable Yosef to ascend to the position of royalty and power and influence over the Egyptian empire. The Torah tells us that's incorrect. Yosef's ascent was already determined. It was determined when Yosef was 17 years old and he had the dreams in which he saw God was showing him that his brothers will bow to him. And how? By stalks, their stalks of wheat representing food. That means in regard to food, the world will be at your feet, Yosef. You will be the one to sustain the world when there is a hunger and a famine. Yosef was already aware that he had a very unique mission and a purpose for his existence. And that was to provide for his brothers and provide for the world, to provide for the humanity. And Yosef was able to endure all the hardships of being sold by his brothers, being taken as a slave and a servant, being accused falsely by the wife of Potiphar, being imprisoned for a total of 12 years in a dungeon. He was able to endure this because Yosef knew this is the hand and the will of Hashem preparing him for his mission. He was being prepared. He understood what it meant to have hunger. He understood what it meant to be treated like the lowest class of human being. And he never forgot this. And when he became the great ruler, he cared for the needs of even infants and every human being. Yosef understood that everything that transpired was a preparation for his ultimate goal. But that goal wasn't just to be the one who sustains people during a famine. Yosef understood it was much greater than that. And therefore, when the time for Yosef's ascent came, that's where the Parsha begins. After 2 years of Yosef's concluding his 12 years of being incarcerated, now is the point at which Yosef must begin his ascent, and therefore the result is Paro dreams. Paro's dream wasn't the cause. The cause of Paro's dream was that this was the determined Basher time that the Almighty chose for Yosef to ascend. And Yosef recognized that his true mission was to prepare this land of Egypt, prepare the root of all exiles for not only Jewish survival, but that we should thrive and fulfill our mission, the mission to fulfill the purpose for creation. And therefore, Yosef instituted some remarkable things. It says that during when the famine came, the people came to Paro. Paro said, whatever Yosef tells you, you should do. Rashi tells us, What were they referring to? Paro said to them, well, what is it that you want? What's your problem? They said, Yosef is telling us, all the Egyptian men, first circumcise yourselves, then I'll sell you the food. What does this mean? Paro, we turn to you. This is insanity. And Paro said, well, let me ask you a question. Everybody knew during these 7 years of plenty that we were putting aside food. Why didn't you put aside food? They said, we did. And what happened to it? It spoiled, it rotted. They said, this man Yosef, he is a holy man. The divine spirit rests within him. If he tells you to circumcise yourselves, do it. Why would Yosef care if the Egyptians are circumcised? What are they? They're not converting. What's this all about? And we also find that Yosef tells them 1 day a week they should rest. Doesn't have to be Shabbos or whatever. 1 day a week there should be a day of rest. Okay? He also tells them that at the new moon we should rejoice. Why is Yosef doing this? Our sages, the Bnei Yissaschar says that's the meaning of the word chimesh, ches mem shin. Ches stands for chodesh, Rosh Chodesh, rejoice. The mem stands for milah, circumcision. The shin stands for Shabbos. Yosef was instituting this in Egypt. That's what it means, chimesh. He was preparing the land. He prepared them in these manners and these issues in addition to gathering the grain. Why would Yosef be doing this? The answer is because Yosef knew that his family would be coming down to Egypt, that the fulfillment of God's covenant between the parts with Abraham, that your descendants will be alienated, oppressed in a foreign land, there will be strangers, is now unfolding. And Yosef wanted to guarantee and make sure that the Jewish people would be able to retain their faith even when they are found in the incinerator amongst the filth of the depravity of Egypt, that the Jews should be able to retain their bris milah, their Shabbos, their rejoicing with Rosh Chodesh, their traditions. That if the Egyptians are not foreign to this, it would be that much easier for Bnei Yisrael, the Jews, to do so. Indeed, we find that Hanukkah, the Yevonim, the Syrian Greeks, they prohibited Torah study, bris milah, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh observance. These things were exactly what they prohibited. And yet Klal Yisrael remained steadfast in their observance, even if it meant at the risk of their own lives. This is what Yosef was doing. And Yosef understood that the exile to Egypt, this is the root of the 4 exiles that will follow. And that Yosef was preparing not just the ability for his family to live in Egypt, not just for Klal Yisrael to be able to survive Paro and the decrees of the Egyptians, but that Klal Yisrael would be able to overcome, withstand, endure the spiritual suffering from the 4 exiles. In addition to the physical suffering, the spiritual suffering, to have the inner strength to stand steadfast for our faith, which indeed we see in Hanukkah. Purim, Haman wanted to destroy our bodies. Hanukkah, they wanted to destroy our souls. And that's when we took up sword, and that's when we went to battle. We will battle for our faith, battle for our souls. And this is the seed that Yosef planted. And Yosef was planting the seed not only for the 4 exiles, but for the ultimate redemption. Our sages tell us there will be Mashiach ben Yosef, the Messiah from the tribe of Yosef, who will engage in the beginning war with Gogum from Magog. The Messianic war will begin with the Mashiach from Yosef, and it will be concluded by Mashiach ben Yehuda from the tribe of Yehuda. And then the prophecies will all come to fruition. And this is what Yosef was orchestrating. He was putting his brothers in a circumstance to purify them, help them recognize their mistake, their sin. And not only that, Yosef was also bringing to fruition this bond, this connection between Yosef and Yehuda. Yosef's accusation of Binyamin was to enable Yehuda to demonstrate his love, his bond, his dedication to Binyamin, the brother of Yosef, the children of Rachel. And when Yosef is speaking with Yehuda, the Parsha is not stopping in a cliffhanger. On the contrary, Yehuda is saying to Yosef, what can we say? What can we speak? How can we justify ourselves? Our sages tell us Yehuda is referring to the destruction of the first temple. What can we say? We were found guilty. Yehuda says, what can we state in regard to the destruction of the second temple? Here too, there were flaws in our character. But how can we justify ourselves when the third temple will be built and all of mankind will recognize that Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, were pure and holy, and that we were able to withstand all the vile anti-Semitism and all of the horrific events cast upon us? This is what Yehuda is saying. Yehuda is saying to Yosef, this viceroy, I'm aware that indeed our coming here might be the expression of what will be the exiles, but there will be a third and final temple. And indeed, that's what Yosef was hoping to hear. Yosef was hoping to see Yehuda coming forth and invoking the hand of Hashem, guiding us through the exiles to bring us to the Messianic era in which we will be worthy of seeing the third and final temple and all of humanity recognizing the truth and the righteousness of Israel. That's where the Parsha stops. That was the goal of Yosef. At that point, Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, God will be recognized as the king, the only king over all the land, all mankind. On that day, God will be recognized as one, the only one, and his name will be one. May we be worthy of witnessing this speedily in our lifetime. As we light the candles, the flames of the menorah, may we be able to sense the sparks and the illumination of this messianic era permeating within our lives. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay Jewish. Have a wonderful Shabbos.